Thank you for taking the time to check out the Inside Myanmar podcast. If you like what you hear, we would be very grateful if you might consider rating, reviewing, and/or sharing this podcast. Every little bit of feedback helps. Also, be sure to subscribe to the Inside Myanmar podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever else you get your podcasts. And if your feed is not in your podcast player, please let us know and we will ensure it can be offered there. For this episode of Inside Myanmar, we're at Thammasat University here in Bangkok with my esteemed guest, and I would like to invite you to introduce yourself and your background.
Hi, my name is Kitti Prasirtsuk. I'm a professor of international relations at the Faculty of Political Science, Thammasat University. The area of my expertise is on international relations in the Indo-Pacific and also ASEAN, issue on ASEAN, America-Thai alliance, for example. Right, we need to reflect the past about what ASEAN has been doing with the Myanmar crisis since 3 years ago. I think the first thing we need to recap is the five-point consensus. Five-point consensus whereby ASEAN issued this five-point consensus right after the Myanmar crisis took place in 3 years ago. That means to ask for peaceful resolution, to ask for ceasefire, thing like that, for the five-point consensus. And they also appointed the special envoy from Brunei, because Brunei was the chair of the ASEAN summit of that year, 2021. And Brunei envoy was sent to Yangon to discuss with the military junta, but things did not get further. It just stagnant, so to speak. But ASEAN, with the leadership of Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei, and the Philippines, they push forward for five-point consensus. They are more eager to deal with the Myanmar issue. Thailand, meanwhile, remained on the sideline most of the time in the previous government. They just think probably it's too complicated, and we have to wait for the Myanmar side to ask for help, to ask for Thailand to help negotiate or something like that. But we are not proactive. We just more like a passive. But ASEAN, as I said, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, and Brunei, they are more like take a leadership in Myanmar issue, in having the five-point consensus, inviting Min Aung Hlaing to discuss in Indonesia at the ASEAN Secretariat only a few months after the coup d'etat. So that's how ASEAN has been dealing with Myanmar issue in the first year. In the second year, ASEAN was chaired by 2022, the second year of the crisis, Myanmar crisis. Hun Sen from Cambodia was the chair of the ASEAN summit of that year, and he also tried to talk with military junta, try to solve the issue by ASEAN, but he did not get much collaboration from the military junta. And at one point, he criticized he have a strong word for military junta as well. But that something like that. So the issue, the situation, fighting has been going on, and then last year, 2023, Thailand uh, finally made a move. Thailand finally made a move by our foreign minister, Don Pramad But his move came not at a good timing because he moved when he was interim government. In the interim government, we are waiting for the general election in the middle of last year. And in July, he managed to go to Myanmar and to meet with Aung San Suu Kyi. Aung San Suu Kyi for the first ASEAN high-rank officer that can meet with Aung San Suu Kyi after the coup d'etat. And after that, Prime Minister Don organized a meeting in Pattaya, inviting military junta and other factions to come to discuss in Pattaya. But that was not welcomed by ASEAN because he did not do that on the consultation with ASEAN. He just did on the Thai government on its own. So I don't think ASEAN was happy about that. Indonesia, Malaysia was not happy about that. Plus, during interim government,
Yeah.
uh, he didn't have much authority during that time, but he decided to do that. I think why he decided to convene the meeting in Pattaya. First, because 36 years ago, Thailand organized the same meeting with the three factions of Cambodian faction that involved in civil war. They hold a meeting in Pattaya in order to reconcile, to make a compromise.
Right.
So Thailand was quite instrumental in that meeting in Pattaya. So I think he would like to do that again. But that did not make a good progress in the Myanmar crisis. And plus, Foreign Minister Don move was not well received by ASEAN countries.
Have there been factions in Thai politics or different leaders or parties that have come out strongly on the other side in terms of describing the role that Thailand should be playing to recognize the NUG or support the democracy movement that perhaps has not been seen at a leadership level, but there have been this minority voice?
Right. Among academic and among the opposition leaders, like in the Move Forward Party,
Sure.
have the more advanced looking politician that they think that we should support democracy more. And at least we should play some role in this conflict rather than staying in the sideline, waiting for Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia to move first. But we did move, but a little bit late and not in the right timing. And in fact, when Foreign Minister Don convened the meeting in Pattaya, it also was criticized as if it to legitimize the military junta as well. I don't think the Thai government or even the previous one would like to support the military government in Myanmar. They just want to work with people in power and not affect our interests, particularly on energy, on Thai investment in Myanmar. I think they just think about that, not go as far as to support military government in Myanmar. So the reason why Thailand had been quite passive in dealing with Myanmar issue, I think there are three reasons. First, on our economic interests, particularly on energy, which we rely a lot on gas from Myanmar, gas pipeline from Myanmar, and also our Thai investment in Myanmar. And Thailand just think that because the Myanmar military government take control of the pipeline and also rule and regulation in the central government, we should be friends with military government and we should not intervene. And secondly, on the military to military relation, because Prime Minister Prayut, the previous Prime Minister, he also came from coup d'etat. And even after that, he was elected in a more like a democratic government, but yet in military point of view, they still have want to keep good relation with Myanmar military. But in fact, that can be leverage for Thailand as well because we have good relation with the military in Myanmar. But we somehow did not use that leverage. We would like to be friend with people in power so that they can protect our economic interests in Myanmar.
Right. So these are the reasons that you're attributing to the passivity that we're seeing in the Thai response. What kind of response would you like to see?
Well, I think Thailand and ASEAN need to work together more closely and deliberating what would be the good way to engage with Myanmar because now situation has changed. The opposition forces in Myanmar have been gaining ground in many ways, and military government has been under the setback. So probably it's time to negotiate to help solve the problem for the people. And in fact, not only at ASEAN level, we have another two layer of actors or player in this Myanmar issues. The major powers like China, India, even neighboring country like Bangladesh, the United States, or even Japan. We also should discuss with all of them. In fact, we have been in the talk, but I think we need to work more closely on this. And we also have UN special envoy on Myanmar issue. I think Julie Gilson from Australia.
Yeah.
That at the international organization level, we need to work at the three level and how to engage with all the side, all the fighting group in Myanmar and try to get the solution for them.
Sure.
Ceasefire, I mean.
So you used an interesting word to negotiate with the different parties involved, and this has been a very hot topic in Myanmar because there have been many in the democratic movement saying that what has the military possibly done in its history of rule to ever give a sense of reasonable expectation that they are going to abide by whatever kind of negotiation happens. You yourself mentioned the 5-point consensus, and just that's made a laughing stock really of the whole region and how they've done. So, what I know that from ASEAN's point of view, there has been a desire to want to, from some, to want to see the Myanmar military in as one of the as some solution to the future of Myanmar, while others have called out, especially within the democratic movement, that look, these guys have never shown that they have a shred of credibility in how they approach it. So, what are your thoughts on how Thailand and ASEAN are seeing the military as a somewhat reasonable partner to negotiate with, and to what extent are they? To what extent do you think that they should be including military in some of those discussions?
That is very complicated, but I think in reality, we cannot ignore the military junta because they still hold some grip of power in the central area. And I think there are let's say we have three big faction in Myanmar, the military, the NUG, and the uh, minority groups, opposition forces, but they are very complicated. We know that. But these three major groups need to somehow reconcile for the sake of the people. I just maybe too idealistic, but uh, unbearable for the suffering of the people. Uh, Whether you are Burman, you are minority, or you are from the NUG. So I just hope that it's time for them to talk, to get settled, and to divide the authority in the country or something like that. But it's not easy. Of course, it's not easy. But I think the situation seems to be in that directions. The military cannot hold on the power like before,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Do you think they recognize that?
I think they still want to fight. They still want to fight. They want to fight back. They want to get to gain back. But you look at the military conscriptions, that the conscription of people at 18 years old, that means more and more people will flee the country to Thailand.
Yeah.
And that gonna be a big repercussions for both Myanmar and for Thailand as well. Thailand probably cannot absorb all the people who are fleeing to Thailand. So we need to get something at this point. I think we need to at least we need to talk and try to find some solutions. We need to do some ceasefire, thing like that. I think.
So, if you believe the military does have to be part of that negotiation table, uh, what ideas do you have as to how that conversation can possibly take place so that so whatever agreements and resolutions and discussions are led, that there is accountability and transparency and we don't see the same old story playing out that we've seen for generations here?
I think the role of country like China would be quite important because China has influence over the military junta and some opposition force, some minority groups as well. I don't think it in any people interest to keep the fighting going on, right? And how we can stop that, how we can make a deal out of that. Of course, the military has not been credible, but they're still formidable forces in Myanmar politics and how we engage with them. Or we have the NUG and opposition forces to overthrow the military all over, but I don't see that happening. I don't think that can be possible.
What do you see as how China is viewing this development, and where do they stand today? What do they want? We know they want stability, but what do you think they're willing to do to get it, and how would they like to see that stability play out?
Mm. They would like to take control. They would like to have influence over Myanmar for sure.
Yeah.
So far, they have done that through the military government. But after Aung San Suu Kyi came to power, the Myanmar government diversified its ties with major powers, right? But after the coup d'etat, it seemed it went back to China again. But things complicated because of the illegal businesses along the border and
Yeah.
so on. And the military junta work with the illegal businesses, and the Chinese government is not happy about that. And they also support opposition forces to get rid of the illegal businesses from China. So China seems to support both military junta and also opposition forces,
Yeah. Right.
right, in order to get rid of the illegal Chinese businesses. So, but for the NUG, I don't think China has much influence or work with them that much.
Right. So you also talked about with this new conscription law that there's going to be an absolute overwhelming wave of Burmese youths fleeing legally or illegally, likely very illegally, at all costs to avoid what amounts to certain death and being used as human shields. And you mentioned that Thailand can simply not absorb this influx of what we're looking at. So what does that mean that Thailand can't absorb it? What do you see as the near future for the massive migrants coming, and what and how that will start to affect this country?
Well, if we can expect a big wave of migrant coming, so if migrant can come to serve in some industry, like work as labor, that's fine. But I think it's gonna be oversupply, and people who come to Thailand but no work, no shelter, or that gonna be a problem that you can imagine, crime and other things, and even accommodating in the refugee camp, it's quite costly and a lot of work, a lot of work. We should not let that situation happen too much, and then we cannot control or contain. So Thailand will be very affected by that. I just hope that the fighting factions in Myanmar can come to negotiate somehow, but that need influence of major powers, and ASEAN should be a facilitator as well. But that very idealistic, fighting faction that just want to take advantage as much as possible.
Yeah.
And now the opposition forces, the minority group leader, they pressure the military junta to step down outright.
Yeah.
And they're not gonna yield on that. The military not gonna yield on that. So it's like a deadlock now.
But I have not heard any signs that they're also looking to negotiate with those forces, maybe especially at the top, because they know that there's no there's no safe harbor for them. Maybe there's been talk of other people in the military having an internal coup in hopes of getting out of this mess.
But if not negotiating, it seems that we have to wait for more people to be killed.
Yeah.
Millions.
Yeah.
That not we do not want that to happen.
Yeah.
I think what we are discussing now is trying to stop that from happening. But how can we do that is on negotiation. But it's difficult. I understand fully that it's difficult, but we need to make efforts toward that directions. Even though we may fail, Thailand, ASEAN may fail, but at least we need to show the world that we make a full attempts.
Do you think they're
do
making
so.
those efforts and attempts now? Are you seeing evidence of that taking place?
Mr. Hun Sen, he has a video call with Min Aung Hlaing, I think you know that. And he asked to meet with Aung San Suu Kyi. But Min Aung Hlaing, I don't think he agree. I don't think he agree. He still, as you said, has a very stiff position on the crisis and do not compromise, do not want to negotiate or anything. And last week it was new that Mr. Thaksin, former Prime Minister, also met with a lot of minority group in Chiang Mai last month and trying to be the mediator because he know that he are close to Min Aung Hlaing and military junta as well. He would like to establish himself as a mediator, but that seemed not to come from the Thai government strategy. He acts on his own. Even foreign ministry maybe not know about that. So
what do you think of that?
I think we need to synchronize. I think informal channel is not bad. But it need to be under the synchronized strategies, well-informed, integrated strategies.
Sure. So this is very non-conventional as far as diplomacy goes. This kind of going out on your own. Why do you think he did that? Why did he put himself in that position?
He a businessman. He very fast moving, and sometimes not careful thinking. Sometimes he want to move as fast as possible. And I think he care about the situation in Myanmar. He care about Thailand. And he would like to establish himself as a mediator in this case. In fact, in our academic community, we have been discussing informal channel who would be a good one to negotiate with Myanmar. We thought about Dr. Surin Pisuwan, but he passed away. We did not have that kind of caliber person in our Thai political community. But now Thaksin emerged as the self-appointed mediator for this. As I said, informal channel is not bad, but it needs to be done through the good consultation with first Thai government and also with ASEAN. But now it seems that Mr. Thaksin, Mr. Hun Sen, he acted on his own.
Right.
So
yeah. And how did the Thai government that he was not a part of anymore, as he was representing himself, how did they look at what he self-appointed himself to do?
The new foreign minister, he just said he was not aware of that, and think Thaksin is a well-connected person. He can talk with anybody, things like that. But that's not the case. That's not the case. It's more important than that. We need to move in a group strategy for the country, for ASEAN as well.
What have you heard about how those meetings went and how they received him?
Well, the minority group, in fact, they rely on Thailand in many ways. So if they have a chance to talk with senior people in Thailand, they would do. but it doesn't mean that they would agree with Mr. Thaksin that Thaksin can be mediator. In fact, News reported that Mr. Thaksin also prepared a document for minority group leader to sign to appoint or to authorize Mr. Thaksin to be mediator, but they declined to sign.
Yeah.
And in fact, some minority group leader they invited not the right person because it's so complicated, so many group in the current group and so on.
Yeah.
So they move too fast.
Well, apparently, also he confused the names of the Karen and the Kachin organizations famously, right? That's not a good look to have a self-appointed representative mediator that is not connected to the current Thai government, that is then mispronounced, that not just mispronouncing, is misplacing one ethnic group with another. This is really embarrassing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Again, he moved so fast. He's like a businessman.
Yeah.
So he better get things done as soon as possible.
Do you have any hopes for his involvement?
I'm afraid not. I'm afraid not. At least unless we have a synchronized arrangement in the Thai government and with ASEAN. That need to be done in good consultation with ASEAN. With Laos is the chair countries. They also share border with Myanmar. They also care about the issues. We need to work with that.
Right.
And also with major power. I think major power would be more decisive factors.
Now, you mentioned the humanitarian corridor, and I want to get into that. Before getting your views on that, can you just explain for our listeners who might never have heard of this, what the humanitarian corridor, what the rationale behind it is, and how it's been operating?
It's more about the supply of foods and medical supply to needy people who suffering from the fight, from the warfare. And that is done through the Red Cross Society of Thailand and Myanmar. But things get complicated because in the border area is controlled by Karen group, not by the central government. But the Red Cross Myanmar controlled by the military government. So I think people are perplexed. Who would receive that? Karen people or Myanmar people in the other area? It's quite complicated. But now it has been stopped. And because our former foreign minister resigned, Mr. Panpri resigned, and his advisor, Mr. Sihasak, who used to be permanent secretary of foreign affairs, he was instrumental in organizing the humanitarian corridor. He also had to resign with Foreign Minister Panpri. So things got some stagnant. And now we got a new team in the foreign ministry, the new foreign minister. We need some time to look at this issue again, whether we should reestablish humanitarian corridor again, if it was effective last time, something like that.
So then looking ahead to the reestablishment of another humanitarian corridor, do you think that should be approached differently than the official channel? Quote, I should have air quotes between the quote unquote official channels, because the military is justifiably not seen as legitimate by many parties. And so they are not seen as being a credible receiver and deliverer of aid, and that it should be going through other networks. That poses a challenge for some, because that would be seen as legitimizing or accepting other local leaders and groups in the country, and therein lies the problem. But what as the humanitarian corridor is revisited by this new administration, what do you think they might do, and what do you think they should do?
I think they might work with NGO group, probably more effective and deliver to the people, regardless of minority, rather than working with Red Cross Society, which pretty much connected to the military government.
And you think they will do that?
I hope they will. I hope they will, because they need a different approach.
Because the regime obviously would not like that.
Right. But working with NGO seems to be the direct access to people.
Yeah, right. So one of the things I'm thinking as I talk to you, I spoke last year to former U.S. Ambassador Scott Marcial, and we spoke about his tenure in Myanmar and the way he looks at the crisis today. And at the end of the conversation, I pointed out, I said, you are a lifelong diplomat, and a key tenet of diplomacy is the art of communication, negotiation, discussion. Given how collapsed we see the problem and the crisis in Myanmar, I asked him if he felt that any form of diplomacy or of conversation or dialogue with the military was still a viable action. And his to summarize it, I encourage listeners to go back and hear his full answer, but to summarize it, he felt probably not, that they have shown themselves not as a credible partner. And as I spoke to him, it was this kind of heartbreaking disappointment at the end of the talk that you have a lifelong career diplomat who doesn't seem to believe in diplomacy in this instance. This is how broken it is. The reason I'm bringing this anecdote up is that I am now speaking to an expert in political science in Thai-Myanmar relations, and a subject matter that you've studied for years. And I hear a similar tenor in your voice as we talk about this, that as informed as you are about the nature of political science, and as you've studied the region, some of the questions I've asked, you seem to be at a loss as far as what could happen, what might happen, how effective that can be. And so just as speaking to Scott Marcial and a career diplomat who did not really see a way forward for diplomacy, I feel like I'm now speaking to a political scientist who is at a loss to see how the politics of all this will get sorted out.
Usually has the depression on this, but I think at least we should make an attempt or efforts in help solving the issues, because thing has changed. 3 years passed, the military government is not as strong as before, so it more likely that they would like to negotiate more than 2 years ago, for example. And that would be needed influence from China. I think we need to discuss with China how we cannot let this situation go on and on. I'm sure it's difficult because like Ukraine and Russia, they have been fighting how many years now? Three years already. In Myanmar, 4 years already, right?
Yeah.
So it seems that they want to fight until one side become defeated, and then they start negotiating. But that will incur the cost of casualties, of people suffering. Can we agree on that? I don't think we do. And we need to try. When situation change, we have another big try, big attempt to help. But if we fail, we understand that thing is complicated. We cannot help, we cannot save the world, but at least we need to give it a try. I just think that Thailand, ASEAN, major power should discuss together on how to engage with Myanmar. Just a hope, but unless we have a hope, we have nothing. We have to let the people suffer. It's not good.
So you see the way forward, or the way forward that you would like to see, would be a increased dialogue and negotiation with as many regional partners and even partners outside the region that are coming in to bring all parties of the table in Myanmar together to try to foster a dialogue that all of these complex parties with their backgrounds can somehow agree to and then adhere to afterwards.
Right. At least we need some, to have an analogy in Palestine, Israel, we need some ceasefire, right? And I think the pressure from China to military government is so important, very important. That it would be a good message. So I just have a hope in China as a decisive factor, even more than United States, even more than India in this case.
You have that hope, but do you think that's a likelihood? Do you see China stepping forward in that way?
I don't see any sign. But we need to convince. We need to discuss. We need to talk with China and get China on board. On this.
But then the other problem, as you just mentioned, is that you also don't see a Thai leader capable of being a person, a man or woman of the moment, to be able to step up into what's needed. So that is another problem with this.
Right.
You know.
Right. Thaksin seemed to be the man, but his move is a little bit illegitimate at this point. And he still under the parole. He on parole. He not free man. He's not a free man, so he cannot play so much role, right?
Another question I'm having is I've spoken with different people in the region about how what's happening in Myanmar is not just staying within the borders. This is most true of Thailand, where you have this long border where, as you said, they simply can't absorb the influx of migrants and refugees that will come as a result of conflict. But we've talked about that, and the area I want to ask you about is more the conceptual than the actual, in terms of you have this battle waging right now in Myanmar between tyrannical, corrupt, tyrant forces and those forces that are, I don't want to overstate it or romanticize it, but forces that are speaking of inclusion and federal democracy and having and human rights and these progressive values that we all hold dear. And you're seeing this battle wage out in front of us. And if it continues into the turmoil it is, that destabilizes the whole region. But if there's one of these sides that can ultimately be able to prevail over the other, what kind of signal or sign does that send to Thailand and the region?
Well, I think many people in Thailand would be heartened by the victory of minority forces because they managed to win over the tyranny, the dictatorial regime. But still, I think the majority of Thai people would concern about instability in the countries. It doesn't mean that we prefer stability at all cost, but somehow the opposition force, they also receive support from some major power. Otherwise, they would not win over the military. So it seems to be complicated. I don't think we have the signal. Maybe the military cannot rule permanently. They have some weaknesses. They have some vulnerability. That probably the signal. Probably the signal. But overall, I think we are concerned about the situations, and we think major power involvement is also important key for resisting group to win over the military as well. Otherwise, they do not have enough weapons, munitions.
Right.
It has been fortunate for Myanmar because now you see in Southeast Asia, country like Vietnam, Cambodia, after long civil war, they take off quite well. They become industrialized, they develop well, but in Myanmar, we still stuck in the like a Cold War era or even pre-Cold War era of ethnic fighting, and we cannot foresee the end game yet. That is very unfortunate.
Yeah.
We just hope that myself, I just can be federalism in there, and how to they distribute to share the authority, share the interest well. That probably the model that Myanmar should go. And I hope all sides would be accepting that they need to reconcile in that way rather than military want to dominate the whole country, thing like that. And we just pray for Myanmar all the best. And I hope Thailand, ASEAN countries, and major power nearby will come together to sort out some solution for them.
One of the most tragic aspects of the current crisis in Myanmar is how isolated Burmese protesters feel, and in fact are. Thankfully, through our nonprofit organization Better Burma, we are able to ensure that all donations successfully reach their intended target. So if you found yourself moved by today's discussion and want to do what you can to help, please consider giving to our fund, which is 100% directed towards supporting the movement. If you would like to join in our mission to support those in Myanmar who are being impacted by the military coup, we welcome your contribution in any form, currency, or transfer method. Your donation will go on to support a wide range of humanitarian and media missions, aiding those local communities who need it most. Donations are directed to such causes as the Civil Disobedience Movement, CDM, families of deceased victims, internally displaced person IDP camps, food for impoverished communities, military defection campaigns, undercover journalists, refugee camps, monasteries and nunneries, education initiatives, the purchasing of protective equipment and medical supplies, COVID relief, and more. We also make sure that our donation fund supports a diverse range of religious and ethnic groups across the country. We invite you to visit our website to learn more about past projects as well as upcoming needs. You can give a general donation or earmark your contribution to a specific activity or project you would like to support, perhaps even something you heard about in this very episode. All of this humanitarian work is carried out by our nonprofit mission, Better Burma. Any donation you give on our Insight Myanmar website is directed towards this fund. Alternatively, you can also visit the Better Burma website, betterburma.org, and donate directly there. In either case, your donation goes to the same cause, and both websites accept credit card. You can also give via PayPal by going to paypal.me/betterburma. Additionally, we can take donations through Patreon, Venmo, GoFundMe, and Cash App. Simply search Better Burma on each platform and you'll find our account. You can also visit either website for specific links to these respective accounts or email us at info@betterburma.org. That's Better Burma, one word, spelled BETTERBURMA.org. If you would like to give in another way, please contact us. We also invite you to check out our range of handicrafts that are sourced from vulnerable artisan communities across Myanmar, available at alokacrafts.com. Any purchase will not only support these artisan communities, but also our nonprofit's wider mission. That's Aloka Crafts, spelled ALOKACRAFTS, one word, alokacrafts.com. Thank you so much for your kind consideration and support.
Oba yarananda dayananga yaranaya dayanang boda yaranang